So, Iron Maiden is hitting the big 5-0. 50 years! I mean, think about it. In the music industry, which just chews up bands and spits them out, how on earth has this group not only survived, but built a literal empire? An empire that's lasted half a century. So yeah, the big question is, how'd they pull it off? Let's dig in.
Okay, so to really get a sense of just how massive Iron Maiden is, you gotta wrap your head around this one number. 130 million. And no, that's not how many miles they've flown or t-shirts they've sold, though I bet those numbers are insane too. We're talking albums. Over 130 million albums sold. That puts them in the same stratosphere as, Michael Jackson, the Beatles. It's just staggering.
Which, brings us right back to the central mystery here. How did this band, coming from the gritty, working-class East End of London, a band that got zero help from the radio and seemed to actively court controversy,
how did they become this global cultural force? I mean, let's be real, there's so much more than just a band. They're a brand, an entire philosophy, really a way of life for millions and millions of fans. So yeah, let's break down exactly how they built this incredible empire.
All right, part one, forged in the East End. The whole story kicks off on a pretty weird day for a heavy metal band, Christmas Day 1975. That's when bassist Steve Harris had this big idea. He pictured a band that could mash up the brainy complexity of progressive rock with the raw, in-your-face energy of punk. And the name? Iron Maiden. Yep, inspired by a medieval torture device he saw in a movie. You can't make this stuff up. Right from the jump, they had a secret weapon, something that made them sound like nobody else. It's called the Maiden Gallop. You know the sound. That driving, relentless rhythm that feels like a full-on cavalry charge coming right at you. It's the DNA of their most iconic songs. This was Steve Harris's signature move, and man, it made them stand out immediately. But look, finding the right crew to pull off this new sound, it was a total meat grinder. This timeline here shows what the band kind of jokingly called extreme personnel fluidity, which is just a fancy way of saying there was a revolving door of musicians. People were in and out constantly. Steve Harris was just ruthless in his search for the perfect lineup. He even tried out a singer who used fake blood on stage, and get this, a keyboardist. It was a chaotic time.
And then it all clicked. It all started with a simple demo tape. For just 200 quid, they laid down 3 songs. A local DJ got his hands on it, started playing it, and bam! The tracks just exploded, shooting right to the top of his club's chart. They pressed 5,000 copies themselves, and they sold out, instantly. And here's the crazy part. This wasn't just the big break for Iron Maiden, this was the spark. This was what lit the fuse for the entire new wave of British heavy metal.
Okay, next up, conquering the world. So now they've got a major record deal, right? Iron Maiden is officially ready to take over the planet. But there was one massive change they had to make first. They needed a new frontman. Now look, Paul Di'Anno's raw, street-level punk voice, it was perfect for their early stuff. Absolutely perfect. But to get to that next level, to become the band Steve Harris envisioned, they needed a singer with a much bigger vocal range. And boy did they find him. Enter Bruce Dickinson. His voice was so powerful, so operatic, they called him the air raid siren. And with him on board, the door was suddenly wide open for them to write those sweeping, epic, historical sagas that they're now famous for. So, with Bruce now leading the charge, they head into the studio and record their absolute game-changer of an album, The Number of the Beast. Now, this thing would go on to become one of the most controversial albums of the entire decade. But the inspiration behind it all? It's almost funny. It was just Steve Harris having a bad dream after watching a horror flick. That's it. Yeah, that album title and the cover art, it completely freaked people out in the United States, sparking a full-blown satanic panic. Yet protesters organizing these huge public record burnings. Some people were so scared they'd smash the vinyl records with hammers because they thought they'd inhale satanic fumes from the smoke. It's wild. And the whole point of this backlash was to crush the band, right? Well, guess what? It did the exact opposite. It handed them millions of dollars in free publicity and basically solidified their image as the ultimate rebels.
All right, Section 3, Surviving the Wilderness. So after reaching the top of the mountain, Iron Maiden was about to face its toughest test. The 1990s rolled in, and this would become what everyone calls their wilderness years, a period full of doubt, creative struggles, and just a whole lot of uncertainty.
And the biggest threat came from a totally different scene, all the way over in Seattle. We're talking about grunge. Suddenly, bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam were everywhere, completely taking over the mainstream. And just like that, Iron Maiden's grand melodic style of metal, it was starting to look like a dinosaur, a relic from the past.
On top of all that, they had major drama inside the band. Bruce Dickinson left to do his own thing, a solo career, and that ushered in this completely different chapter, the Blaze Bayley era. You can really see the shift here. The vocal style got grittier, more baritone. The lyrics turned darker, more personal. And those huge stadium tours, they were replaced with gigs in smaller theaters. For a lot of the fans, it really felt like the Maiden empire was starting to crumble.
But, Steve Harris sees it differently. He's always defended that time, calling it a fighting for our lives period. For him, it wasn't some big failure. It was a knockdown, drag-out fight for survival that actually made the band stronger and, in his view, led to some of their most heartfelt and powerful music.
And you know what? That fight was absolutely worth it. Because what happened next is without a doubt one of the greatest comeback stories in the history of rock music. We're talking about the Millennial Renaissance.
So Bruce Dickinson comes back, but here's the twist. They don't just go back to the old lineup. No, they get bigger. They expand to a 6-piece band with count 'em, three lead guitarists. The Three Amigos, they call them. And what this let them do was create this insane wall of sound. They'd spread the guitars across the mix, left, right, and center, and then layer all these incredible harmonies on top of a heavy-as-heck rhythm. The result? A sound that was just colossal, bigger and more powerful than anything they'd done before.
So, the band is back. They're bigger than ever, but now they've got a new kind of problem. A good problem, but still a problem. How do you take this massive show on the road to every single corner of the globe? How do you get to your fans in places like India or Costa Rica?
Well, if you're Iron Maiden, the answer is pretty simple. You go out and buy your own Boeing 747 jumbo jet, you slap your mascot's face on the tail, and you get your lead singer, who, just happens to be a certified airline pilot, to fly the damn thing himself. They called it Ed Force One, and honestly, is there any better symbol of a band's sheer ambition and total independence? I don't think so.
Finally, part 5, an enduring legacy. So what is it? What's the secret sauce that's kept them going for 50 years? Let's break down the key pillars that hold up the entire Iron Maiden empire.
First up, you have to talk about Eddie. Eddie the Head. He's not just some mascot, he is a global icon. You could honestly argue he's the most famous member of the band. And as you can see, he's never stood still. He's constantly evolving, changing his entire look to fit the vibe of every new album, from a street brawler to an Egyptian god to a samurai warrior.
And behind all the killer music, there's an absolutely brilliant business mind at work. Under the guidance of their manager, Rod Smallwood, they basically built a fortress. They completely ignored the radio. Instead, they just focused on two things: touring like maniacs and putting out awesome merchandise. This created this incredible us-against-the-world mentality with their fans. And the result? One of the most fiercely loyal, generation-spanning fan bases you will ever find in music, period.
I mean, at the end of the day, the numbers just don't lie. Over 130 million albums, gigs in more than 60 countries, a Grammy sitting on the shelf. That's not just a career. That's a resume for global domination. Very few bands even come close.
So you gotta ask yourself, in this world of ours, with viral trends that come and go in a day and fame that lasts about 15 seconds, what can a 50-year-old heavy metal band teach all of us about building something that actually truly lasts? By never compromising, by always putting their fans first, and by constantly redefining what a band could even be, Iron Maiden didn't just write songs, they built a legacy that stood strong for half a century. And in today's world, that's a lesson worth learning.